I've wasted hours trying to figure this stuff out so you guys don't have to. In today's video, let's go over 12 things that you absolutely need to know before diving into Umbral Sands. Alright, so diving right in, the first thing I want to talk about and tip, and that brings us to the HP potions and health potions are completely gone. They have completely reworked everything to be all centered around HP and health, and because of that, they have went ahead and added these HP or health totems, if you will, all across the maps and all of the different regions inside of Dragonwilds. You can open up your map, you can see where they are located. All you need to do is adventure to those areas, access the totem, and then it will instantly give you an increase to your maximum health pool down at the bottom bar of your screen. Now, this is very important, and I recommend to every player that is going to be jumping into Umbral Sands to go around and collect all of these, even in the earlier zones in the game. They should be super easy to collect. You might even have some lodestones in that area, but make sure you collect all of these before going in, because it's just going to increase your entire maximum health total, like amount, and it's going to allow you to obviously survive a lot longer into Umbral Sands. Now, diving into tip number 2, I recommend there are 2 different food types going into Umbral Sands that every single player should be utilizing and consuming to just give them an edge going into Umbral Sands. The first one brings us to the pumpkin soup. The pumpkin soup is really good because not only does it give you instant amount of healing, right, for consuming it, but secondly, it also is going to be giving you healing over time, like a regeneration heal, and that is provided by what they call soul food buff, okay? So again, it used to be for ward shields. They removed that and changed it now to HP. Makes pumpkin soup really good. The second thing is going to be the drink, and that is the Cadaver Berry Infusion. This drink not only will fill up your thirst meter, which again is really good, but it's also going to give you a buff called Quenched. Now, what this does is it reduces your thirst drain percentage by 33%, meaning that you don't have to drink as often. And this is going to be really nice because it directly contradicts what is applied to you in Umbral Sands. In Umbral Sands, if you stand in the sun too long, you basically become scorched, and you'll see that indicated by the circle in the center of your screen. And once this gets fully maxed out, your water is basically draining a lot faster than it typically would, eventually dehydrating you and eventually killing you. So naturally, having something like the Cadaver Berry Infusion, reducing that thirst drain amount by 33% is a really nice counter active here to try to mitigate some of that Scorch damage that you're potentially going to be taking when traveling and exploring Umbral Sands. And naturally, as you explore Umbral Sands, you're going to unlock a bunch of new recipes for other things that you can craft and make that will directly give you like resistance to the Scorch buff or debuff, I mean. And because of that, naturally you should stop drinking and eating the pumpkin soup and the Cadaver Berry Infusion, and then obviously move on to the new items that you get from Umbral Sands. Now, diving into tip number 3 brings us back again to the Scorch mechanic. The Scorch mechanic happens anytime you're out in the open sun. If you're adventuring out at nighttime, you don't have to worry about it, but if you are out during the daytime, which inevitably you will be, you're going to run into mitigating this Scorch mechanic. And because of that, you're going to want to stick to the shadows as much as possible. You can actually use something as simple as a individual tree. If it casts a shadow across the sand, you can just make sure you're standing right here inside of the shadow long enough. You'll see that debuff rapidly decrease. Another really good tip is also utilizing like the side or the edge of a cliff. You might not think that you could fit there, or it might not count, but if there's a slight bit of shade, I promise you, even if your entire body's not covered, you can do it, and it does actually work. You might have to, finagle yourself away around a little bit in that area just to get it to proc, but once it does, it'll rapidly decrease it, and you can use it to your advantage. Alrighty, tip number 4 brings us into entering Umbral Sands. Once you enter to Umbral Sands, the very first item that you're probably going to pick up that is new for the zone is called Desert Weeds. You're going to find these basically everywhere. There's not really one specific location to farm a bunch of them, but anyways, here, you're going to collect these Desert Weeds. Now, these are very important. Don't sleep on these, alright? You need to collect as many of these as you possibly can, and you want to collect the seeds because you want to be able to place them in a crop plot once you do chop down one of the new yew trees that you'll see. I believe there's one of those trees right around this little first NPC village that you stumble upon that the storyline takes you to for the quest. Either way here, chop down the tree, learn the crop plot recipe, and then collect as many of these desert weeds as you possibly can, because you're going to need this as it's one of the major ingredients. You're going to need a bunch, a bunch of them to craft pretty much all of the new armor sets for the Umbral Sands region. And with these these desert weeds, that brings us to the second resource that I would highly recommend that you focus on crafting immediately and planting, and that brings us to the pipe cactuses. Again, you'll be able to chop these down with the Dowdun Reach Mithril Axe, I believe. You chop those down, collect those seeds, and once again, go back to your base immediately and start planting these, so then you can then go ahead and move forward with getting an abundance of these crafted up, so then you're ready to go when you are able to craft the brand new armor. Just like with any new region here, there are tons and tons of new resources that you'll uncover in Umbral Sands, some sooner than later, but try not to get too distracted because, like I said, these two, in my opinion, are the most important resources. You're gonna need a bunch of them, and if you do wait, like I unfortunately did, not realizing this, you're gonna spend hours upon hours just sitting at your base farming these resources to have enough in order for you to craft a full piece of gear or a set of gear, so then that way you can survive a lot longer inside of Umbral Sands. So take advantage of it right away. As soon as you get there, start farming it up, go back as soon as you can and get those planted. And now tip number 5 brings us to the first NPC village that you stumble upon for the quest. Once you get here to this area, you might be tempted just to talk to the elder where the quest takes you, and then once it gives you the next step, then heading out on your adventure. I highly recommend that you actually don't, and you wait a second and you talk to all of the NPCs at this town. The reason being is that this very first village, yeah, this very first one, you can actually get your carpet, your magic carpet mount, the new mount for the Umbral Sands area. And it is very, very important. I will talk about more of that here in another tip. But as you adventure and you uncover them, make sure you talk to every single person and then unlock whatever they have for the side quest, so you're not backtracking over and over again. And tip number 6 here, speaking on NPCs, that brings us to our very first time we've had a trader shop inside of RuneScape Dragonwilds that we can access and even trade and even sell goods to. Yeah, you heard me, that's right, sell goods. It's not just another Vestige vendor that you can buy Vestige items from. They do have Vestige items, but they also have items that you can have and find throughout your adventure and sell them directly to these NPCs to collect this currency. Now, the game does not do a very good job of explaining that you can actually sell items back to the trader, so this is why I think it's a really good tip here for every player to know when first jumping into Umbral Sands. You have to have one of the items that the vendor or trader is willing to buy from you. A lot of times it's going to be items that you see that they actually can sell, things like, for instance, desert weed. You can have desert weed that you find and uncover or grow yourself, bring it back here, and then you can see hovered over the icon now in your inventory, it'll have a amount. That amount is what you will get for selling that desert weed to that NPC. If you want to do that, you press and hold Control and you left click with your mouse on that item, and then it will sell it, and then it will give you that amount of currency. You'll see that why the currency is important is because as you level up your reputation with this faction, or with this village, I should say, this trader will then have the additional unlocks from all the different categories that you can buy. And a lot of these items are really, really good. Everything from cosmetic, color sets for your mounts, also going to be some Vestige sets for the different, Umbral Sands region, and just a bunch of different resources and stuff that you are going to need to craft some of the Umbral Sands gear here for tier 7. And now diving into tip number 7, as I mentioned before, the magic carpet mount. And boy, oh boy, this one is a huge game changer here for Umbral Sands. All right, Umbral Sands, the region is not only massive, but it also has a lot of different pockets of water that have like hidden chests or different things around it, but it also has a bunch of quicksand, and especially in the more harder regions or areas of Umbral Sands, you're going to see a lot of quicksand, and there's a lot of even hidden chests and loot and stuff, and even quest items across the quicksand, so you're gonna want and need your magic carpet mount right away. The way to unlock this quickly here, I'm not going to do a full guide, but in order to unlock this, you have to complete all of the side missions and all of the main story stuff at the very first village that you come into for Umbral Sands. Once you do, you talk to Ichor and you talk to the elder, you complete that, he will then grant you the magic carpet, the brand new mount that they've added into the game. Now, the reason why this mount is huge is not only does it increase the amount of traveling speed, right, because you can travel way faster versus what you can walk, and also faster than the Terra Bird, I feel like, in this zone. But secondly, it's really, really good because it allows you to hover over water so you don't fall into water, and secondly, it allows you to hover over quicksand. If you don't hover over quicksand, you will run super and terribly slow, and if at all, eventually probably drowning underneath the quicksand. I don't know, because I actually haven't done it, but the magic carpet allows you to just skate right over top of that super duper fast across the dunes, and it makes a huge difference difference when it comes to progressing and exploring the entire Umbral Sands region. Next up, tip number 8, let's talk about these crazy red dragons. So every single update with new regions in Dragonwilds, they release a new dragon. This one is going to be the red lesser dragons. These ones, again, are no joke if you fight them head on, just like every other dragon for every other region. However, I've got one little tip and trick here that I've figured out, because I am probably the cheese master when it comes to some of this stuff, but I figured out that the random, like, abandoned ruins, or like these, you know, old ancient ruined temples that you will uncover and see that, like, the broken buildings and everything, their blast, or fire blast that they shoot across like an array, does not go through those buildings. So you can use that to your advantage by kiting one of them to one of those little, like, ruined areas, and then just constantly running around those buildings, and then just mitigating the dragon's attacks by hiding and poking around the buildings, attacking when you can, and then rinsing and repeating the process. And this also works really nice with the dunes, right? The big sand dunes. If you cannot have a direct line of sight to the red dragon, it also helps out a ton. So while you're kiting them around some of these, like, ruined areas, you go up and down, like on these dunes when he does some of his attacks and his blast, you will notice they do not shoot through the dune, and if it can't see you, more often than not, it also can't shoot you. So again, it's just another little strategy and, like, cheesy kind of tip here, but it will make a huge difference and allow you to potentially kill a red dragon earlier than you expected. Now, diving into the next tip brings us to the cow fights, okay? When you first discover these cow fights, one of the things that I thought was interesting, and I didn't realize at first, is you can actually break the eggs that you see in these little, like, nesting zones, not just the cow fights. So you might be targeting those right off the bat because they're going to attack you, but if you actually destroy these eggs, this is probably the single-handedly the fastest way, I guess I should say, to get the Ichor that you need from them to make pretty much everything in the game. You're going to need this Ichor to make what they call adhesive, and then you're going to need to be able to make that like the new version of it, of adhesive, basically, that we already have in Dragonwilds. This is a new one, but anyways, making this adhesive is going to be required for pretty much everything. You need it to make the type of scorched leather that you need for armor. You need it to make the weapon pieces. You need to make the adamant armor. You name it. You need it to make a ton of stuff. If you find a bunch of these, like, nests with a bunch of these eggs, make sure you're destroying all of them and collecting as much Ichor as you possibly can. And now, tip number 5 brings us to enemies. Let's talk about a couple of them here. The cow fights, right off the bat, fire is your best friend. Cow fights seem to take a lot more damage to fire type than any other, you know, element. Big groups, big packs of cow fights, it does a really good job for the fire with the AoE and the burn against those guys. And the second enemy brings us to the called Har enemies, right? These things are going to be everywhere over Umbral Sands, right? And they're pretty tough when it comes to the amount of damage that they do when they hit you. They're immune to fire damage, so you're going to need to swap and use either air element or water element to do more damage. When it comes to melee weapons, your standard melee weapons will do some damage, but there's not really, like, any knockback or, like, slight stun effect. I would highly recommend instead utilizing a great axe, a great sword. You can use, like, the Titan's sword that you get from beating the Titan in Daldun Reach. You name it. These items are really good because they add, like, a slight stun effect, and they interrupt all of their attacks besides their main, like, you know, ability attack. With that being said, I think this is the easiest way to kill them. I have seen people use range as well, and I have tested out a crossbow a few times, and it does do a really good job, especially if you can continue to keep your distance. You'll just slowly pick them off until eventually they are killed. Now, diving into something fun and a little bit of a cheese, I'm not sure if they'll patch it here in the future, so it potentially could be if you're watching this video in the future at some point, but the third village, or I guess I shouldn't say third, the third one that we found, but the NPC village in Umbral Sands that is in the far right side of the Umbral Sands region, that NPC village, there is actually 2 different chest spawns that are inside the tents at that village. And what I would recommend doing, if you haven't done so already, is I would place a lodestone down in this village. That way you can always constantly relog over and over again, if you want, of course, to then respawn those chests, and you can constantly refarm them over and over again. This does have the ability to have the rare and unique recipes that you get from Umbral Sands inside these chests. Sometimes they'll have repeats, but they will nevertheless have an abundance of additional resources and runes and stuff that you can just collect as much as you possibly want by doing the reset, or at least once every time you log in to play the game. And finally, if you guys are a returning player here from RuneScape Dragonwilds and haven't touched the game in quite some time, I highly recommend that you check out the video you see here on screen, where I cover everything new and what has changed and what is completely revamped here for RuneScape Dragonwilds that every player needs to know when diving back into the game.